No, people, you are not seeing things. This is Rob Shue, the legendary Rob Shue. It's been way too long. I would say over a calendar year since we talked and did any football related stuff. Before we talk football, I just want to see how Rob Shue is doing. How you doing, man?
I appreciate that. It has been far too long. I think you're absolutely right about it being over a calendar year. And I appreciate that personal touch. That means a great deal. I'm doing good. I always have my ups and downs. I like to be candid on my program and
Yep.
love the fact that on this program, I feel like I can be candid as well. I'm not always in the best mental state, but with the Niners up 3-0 to start the season, that helps out. There's nothing to complain about in Ninerland, or there is, depending on what type of fan you are. We can get into that later. But this is the type of energy I need from football. When we start the season slow, it piles onto my own negativity, my perfectionist nature. But when we are perfect, I can lean into that and borrow the good energy from the Niners. So as of right now, that's the state that I'm in.
I feel like we're in a pretty positive state, but when we discuss what we talked about off camera about the Brock Purdy situation, just trying to warn you, it brings my positive energy down just because I feel like I have to constantly put up with just negativity when it comes to Brock. So
there's a lot of criticism out there, some of it warranted and a lot of it unwarranted. And that's been the case with 49ers quarterbacks going back for years now.
Yeah. Hey, listen, if the internet was around when Steve Young was quarterback, I'm sure there would have been. I was not a Steve Young guy. Okay.
Neither was I. I would have had some historically bad takes on camera if I had been talking to YouTube back then.
We're never going to win with Steve.
Right.
And then
I wanted Steve Bono instead of Steve Young. That's how off I was as an 8-year-old. I was
definitely a big Steve Bono fan back then.
Yeah.
He just reminded me of Joe because he was a right-hander.
Right.
But then it's funny that you look, and this has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. Steve is actually the more approachable, nice one now down the line. Montana, if he's not pushing some sort of product, he's not talking.
No, Montana and occasionally says some strange stuff. Still Joe Cool, still the coolest out there. But I will tell you who is very personable is Steve Bono. I had the opportunity when I went out to Montana and Ronnie Lott's induction to the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, and rode on a bus from the hotel to the enshrinement ceremony. And Steve Bono was in the back. He had everyone in stitches. He was absolutely like the class clown of the bus. It was phenomenal.
I want to real quick say hi to my buddy, Fired Up 49ers. Thank you for coming through. New friend of the channel, my guy, Brian Culp. We do a show on Mondays called Niners Coast to Coast. Brian was at the game yesterday. He's got a picture with Steve Young on the field. Steve Young signed his jacket. And another one of the guys that does the show with me, David McNiner or David McNew. He was also there, also met Steve Young. Freaking ridiculous.
That's phenomenal. Brian, congratulations on that.
Yeah, Brian's probably one of the nicest 49er fans you'll ever meet.
Good dude.
He's a really good guy. Him and his wife both do YouTube. They're really cool. One of these days,
absolutely.
I wouldn't mind doing something with all of us, but one thing at a time, right?
Absolutely. I've been on a roundtable with Brian on Jack's channel.
Yeah, I think me and you were on a roundtable a long time ago on Jack's channel. Way
long time ago.
Yeah, we were both like way younger and sexier looking, but I probably weighed a lot less too.
Speak for yourselves. I may get more bald, but I just continue to get sexier. That's just the way it goes.
I'm kind of transitioning into a dad bod mode, and I'm just gonna have to accept it. Steve Young gave you a hug. Okay, that's cool. That's not
cool. You can't shower
cool
now.
And it's not cool at the same time. Yeah, I'm never going to touch this skin again.
Right.
You're going to be like that guy that's in the Guinness Book of World Records who never took a shower. He's like gray. Yeah.
You're going to have to frame yourself now and hang yourself in the man cave.
Yeah, you gotta create like a flesh skeleton. You gotta somehow remove a layer of skin and stick it somewhere. That's crazy.
So someone's gonna have tuned into this program just a minute late and be like, "What are they talking about?
What is a flesh skeleton? I don't know." All right, I want to do a quick. I call it the fast recap or the fast open.
Cool.
Before we talk about anything specific, what was your overall kind of feeling of the game yesterday? What was your mindset? Because if you watched the game early on, It was a little stressful.
It was.
Offense was looking clunky. Purdy was looking super duper clunky, but in the end, it all worked out. So what was your mindset?
Yeah, initially the score didn't represent what you were seeing as far as the yards that were being put up by the 49ers, the yards that were held on defense. To me, it was ugly but dominant. It was an ugly game. The penalties, the fact that we couldn't complete the drives, stalled out in the red zone multiple times. And yet, when you looked at the stats, when you looked at first downs, when you looked at yardage compared to yards given up, when you looked at every metric you could other than the scoreboard, it didn't reflect it. But by the end of the game, because of those other metrics, because of time of possession being 3-1, eventually on the scoreboard, it showed up the same way. So at the end of the day, it was a dominant win. 30-12 is a dominant win score. And when you look at the stats, yardage, time of possession, first downs, it heavily favored the Niners. I think we were 3-1 or greater in all of those areas. So it was a shellacking, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like the Giants were in it. They certainly were when it was a score or less. And all it takes is for the other team to catch a break, right? In a game like that, where you're allowing the stupid penalties, incomplete drives, where you stall out inside the red zone, you turn the ball over once in the midst of a game like that, and it can flip the script. You can end up 2-1 in yards and still lose a game. So I'm glad that we were against slightly lesser competition, although people have the Giants as a fringe playoff team, and I still think that's possible. We ended up with a dominant win. It just wasn't pretty.
It's one of those things where it's like it's the NFL, like every game is its own entity. You can't take one game and say it's going to affect another. We'll bring it up later, but the penalties are just, if we're ever going to win anything this year, that's gotta stop. Like the penalties are just like every time there's something positive happen on the field, I'm like, wait 10 seconds. And there it comes, yellow. And I'm just like, come on. Like the one penalty where I thought it was a Debo or whatever, got kind of like dragged down by his head and they didn't call it, but yet they called something on us on the same play. I'm like, really? I have been getting a little bit more animated than I have been in the past with games. I've gotten a lot better with the angry tweeting. I stayed off of Twitter all week one until very late in the game.
That space is crazy.
Because it's just and I'm trying to get better because I've had my own meltdowns on Twitter. So, and we'll talk about that in a second with the whole Brock Purdy situation. But it's like, just got to stay off of there. Like, and then it just with the way the game was going, it was just lending itself to everybody having mental meltdowns. And just
absolutely.
See, I told you. Yeah, he's garbage. Yeah, should have never got. And we're still talking about Trey Lance. It's like, dude, he's on the Cowboys. He's been there for like a month now. It's time to let it go. It's time to move on. Time to accept. But
I'll tell you, I have my own father is a bit of a kind of gets into a downer whenever anything goes wrong. And he texted me something about the idea. I'm trying to find it here exactly. He says, game's going on. In the midst of it, we're leading 2 or 3-1 in yards. We're dominating. And I get this text that says, we do not look like a Super Bowl team. I am bummed. And I get it. I know my old man he's a perfectionist. And if he expected, hey, they're the Giants. They're missing Saquon Barkley. They're missing the left side of their offensive line. This should be, we should mop the floor with them if we're a Super Bowl team. But to your point, each game in the NFL unfolds in the way that it does. And Kyle Shanahan sometimes plays into those tight games. And this one is Thursday night game. All of those are going to be slightly trash, right? The team isn't as prepared. They don't have as many days to implement game planning. They can't be as specific against the opponent. Thursday night football is a lesser product than what we watch on Sundays. Absolutely. So to me, to have a 30-12 victory, I texted him, I said, I couldn't feel any differently than I do from you right now. Like, I am very impressed with what the Niners were able to do. And the things that bugged me, the penalties and shit, that feels like stuff that can be cleaned up pretty quickly.
Yeah, everything we've seen so far is all stuff that can be worked on. There's not like some glaring hole that's just like, oh, we're going to have to deal with that all year.
Except maybe the right side of the line, but not a hole, but a weakness.
Yeah, it's definitely the kryptonite of this otherwise really powerful team.
Yeah,
who has a
on
lot
the
of
offense, it sure as hell is.
Oh, they're even when missing. Got like a hair on my hat here. It keeps bothering me. I'm like talking to you and just like grabbing my hat incessantly. I want to hit you with the giant elephant in the room that is, I haven't talked to you in a really long time up until recently, and we've never talked on stream about Brock Purdy. I literally have it here. Oh my God, Brock Purdy is human. That's how I have as my little tab.
Yeah.
First of all, what's your take on Brock Purdy? How do you personally feel about him? What's your expectation level, or like, are you in on Brock Purdy? Are you kind of like, hey, he's just a quarterback right now, I'm just gonna be okay with it, but I wish they would have done better with Trey Lance? What's Rob Shoe's opinion of Brock Purdy, and what you think of his overall play so far this year?
So first, I'll kind of address the idea of the comparison. I try to keep the two separate because I think that's where we get into trouble, is attempting to compare two quarterbacks as opposed to evaluating each on their own and evaluating each spot on the roster independent of the other. I get the need to feel like you have to compare Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, and you have to talk about one success versus the other's potential lack of success. To me, people who watch my program, people who've seen me on your show, probably know that I'm a bit of an optimist. I mean, I try to stay positive with the Niners. I'm a huge fan, first and foremost. I don't contend to be an independent sports journalist, right? I am a 49er faithful through and through. So regardless of who is the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, to me, it's more important the colors you wear on your chest than the individual. And yet, I still do grow attached to people. And then when they leave the team, I am extremely saddened and continue to root for them. That is the same for Trey Lance. I was very optimistic. If you go back and watch my pre-draft program, the year we drafted Lance, I predicted that we would draft Lance. I was excited about drafting Lance, and I remained optimistic about what Lance was going to be able to do within this system. I was bummed when we had to move on, and I understood the decision. I understood that while the compensation was poor, it was necessary to move on and to consider how much we had invested to make the move initially became that sunk cost fallacy. That was money that had already been spent, and it didn't matter in the future decision of whether or not Trey was on this roster. I'm bummed that he went to Dallas most of all, because I want to root for him, and it's hard to root for anybody that's got the star on their helmet. But I will with Trey. If he's ever in there, unless it's against us, I will be rooting for him. With Brock, I just, from the outset, from the first time he jumped into the game, onto the field, I just have been really impressed with the way in which he carries himself. And the same was true for Trey. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, in this instance, I'm not comparing them. This is purely about Brock here. His moxie, the way in which he has both an attitude, both that killer instinct, and the calm, cool, collected nature where he doesn't seem to get flapped, even in high leverage moments. That feels like the type of personality that we need under center. Then when I look specifically at his skill set, he seems tailor-made for the type of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan wants. And that relationship between play caller, in this case, head coach, and the quarterback is so critical, because in those tense moments, that relationship, the compatibility there helps them overcome the stress of those high pressure moments. I've always said that I don't know that Kyle Shanahan is the greatest in those high pressure moments. I think that he's susceptible to the weight of it, at least historically speaking. I think Brock Purdy can offer some balance in that regard. And his skill sets, as far as the accuracy in the short game and the mid game, his decision-making, his understanding of the offense and processing at the line of scrimmage, all of those things are phenomenal. The areas where he may not be up to elite level, such as consistently hitting deep throws, are less important within this offense. It still would be great if he continued to improve in that area, if the percentage of completions beyond X number of yards continued to go up. But I watched him throw some dimes last night, and it's fair to think that with more repetition, they'll start to hit on more of those deep shots.
Kyle Shanahan, I think he was talked to today, and he says he feels even better about his game yesterday. They blitzed him over 80%.
It's crazy.
Last night. 80%.
Crazy.
He didn't have time to throw the ball last night.
No.
And I got into it a little bit with my own brain, like, oh man, I don't know about Brock. I understand what some people are saying, but then I let the game develop, and then I let the context. It's all about what they call context.
Right.
And the more and more I watched the game, and that when it ended, and I got a chance to sit, kind of marinate, the more impressed I was by him. Didn't turn the ball over. He had a couple dangerous throws, but I mean, it happens. Every NFL quarterback does. There's such an onus right now being put on everything that he does. Everything.
Yeah.
People are so wanting to see this kid fail just so they can be right about an argument, instead of enjoying the process of maybe having a guy who doesn't check all the elite boxes when it comes to body size, arm strength, all that stuff.
Yep.
But where he is in spades is what's between the ears. I was talking about this obsession with strong arm guys, right? Big, strong arm quarterbacks. And you have to look no further than Justin Fields. Justin Fields has all the requisite physical traits.
He does.
Where does he lack the most? Between the ears.
Yeah.
He just doesn't, he and you could blame I'm sick of people blaming the organization, the talent. Yeah, has some bearing on it, but sometimes you have to be accountable and say he's almost played 30 games in the NFL and he hasn't shown any drastic improvement.
Yeah, playing from the pocket is certainly a challenge for him.
He just doesn't see the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then you turn it over to Brock, who lacks all the requisite physical traits, right? But yet in the mind, where the game's really played, he's one of the strongest. He sees the field. He's quick decisions. He's not dangerous with the football. He's gonna maybe throw almost a pick here or there. And he's gonna throw an
aggressive. Aggressive is good.
Yeah, and that's where I like him. That's where I really like. I like him in what's between the ears. I've grown so tired of just the conversation of just like, man, these 49er fans will just not allow themselves to enjoy anything. They just want to be right. And it's a sad existence. Me and you have talked about energies taking people down.
Yeah.
When people are constantly bashing or being negative over something, as much as you might like them, you're starting to get like, damn, like it's taxing mentally. And you're right. It brings somebody's mental state down. Because you're trying to enjoy things, and you have to know that during the course of the game, if you go check social media, that person is just not going to relent. They are going to stand firm on their feelings about the kid. And, if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, then he's trash and he's no good. And Kyle and John should be fired. And while they're saying all this, they're not giving you anybody who you could replace any of these guys with. They want everybody fired. They have no answer of like, what's the replacement? Like, for instance, if you're going to get rid of Kyle Shanahan, who are you bringing in? Who? Tell me. Give me one name.
Right. Yeah. The idea that has been around for a long time of fire Kyle Shanahan anytime something goes wrong is one of the most absurd ideas that I hear from 49er fans. And you hear a lot of people that say it with conviction.
Oh, and yeah, they're dead set.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me, quite honestly. I mean, you look at the level of sustained success that this team has been able to put together over the years that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have been there. It is no shock that Jed York is signing them to their second extension after having given them 6-year contracts to begin.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to touch on. We might as well touch on it now. Well, I'll ask you straight up. What do you think about the extensions of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch? I'm fine with both of them. The only one thing I say is
absolutely ecstatic.
Are you okay? I was going to say, the one thing I wish they would, one person I wish they would extend along with them is Adam Peters.
Adam Peters. Yes, please give that man a promotion and a title that allows him to stay within the organization and not be poached as someone else's GM. We have lost at some point the war of attrition of coaches, coordinators, and back office guys getting poached by other organizations. Rand Carthen going to the Titans. Like, yes, I'm extremely happy for all of these individuals. I care about folks who are within the 49ers organization. I want them all to have success. I want them to go on to the jobs that they want. And, Mike McDaniel, I root for. Robert Saleh, I root for. And D'Amico Ryans, I root for. Now I have more teams that, if they're not playing the Niners, I love seeing their success. And the same is true for any of the front office guys. Yet, we've got to retain our own talent at some level. So you got to do what you can. Promotions, things like that. I'm thrilled overall with the extension, because I just honestly, we're in the midst of building a dynasty here. Right? You're at the start of something super special. Lock it down. Try and get all the core players that you can to stick around. Get the head coach to sign on. Get the GM to stick around. You could have the debate around the value John Lynch offers versus the value that Adam Peters offers. And I would be there for that debate, but I think we would need more NFL insiders to give us a true scoop of who's offering what in the front office. I think those of us that are covering on YouTube without inside sources are just speculating as to the effect that each one might have. But I'm with you. Like, the stories I hear about Adam Peters, when I hear him speak, all of those things lead me to believe that he is a guy adding significant value in his role, and we could ill afford to lose him.
I think they all have their respective place, and that if you move one out, I think it affects the other.
Yeah.
I think I think Lynch has always been more of the figurehead, the corporate
I think that's a fair
face,
statement.
the man who, pulls the company line and keeps everybody kind of positive, and, just he's like the guy that, he talks to the troops before the battle kind of thing. Gets everybody
he
going.
inspires confidence.
Woo. He does. Adam Peters, I think, and a lot of these front office guys and these scouts that are all connected, they have done some incredible things with these late round selections. Think about this. You have a 7th round quarterback throwing to a 7th round wide receiver last night.
Ronnie Bell did not look like a 7th rounder last night.
No, he did not. I'm a big Ronnie Bell guy. I feel like he has a chance, the more he plays, to become something that the Niners might have to make a decision in the future when they have to sign other people. Like, maybe we give this guy a chance on a cheaper deal and let somebody else go. You have to let your mind go there, because it is the NFL and you can't sign everybody. But
that's a fact.
It's amazing.
He's a football player. Like, that hit that he laid, I felt like that woke the team up, fired everybody up. And from that point forward, it felt like our foot was on the gas a bit more.
Yeah, for a person who is inherently negative, maybe it's part of my, my mental stuff, what I deal with, my anxiety, depression. I'm a negative person. It's just something that happens. I look at things in a negative way, but I try with the Niners to not do that. And I try to be more positive, and it's hard because I'm a New Yorker too. So, like, we're automatically very negative people. We get very impatient very fast, and everybody's a bum. Everybody sucks. Everybody needs to be fired. That's just how we think in this side of the country. The West Coast, everybody's like, it's all right. It's okay. It's cool.
Yeah, we're a bit more touchy-feely out here.
Yeah, everybody's all about it, the hippie life and, peace and love, baby. Over here, it's like, dude, this guy better get out of here, or we're gonna go into the stadium ourselves and pull him out. Like, it's crazy. But no, like with the Niners, I've tried to stay more positive because, and a lot of people will say, oh, this is such a bootlicker mentality. I saw this on Twitter today. Somebody who covers the Niners calling a fan who chooses to look at things in a positive way instead of being all super like, oh no, and Brock Purdy's a dink and dunk guy. We're called bootlickers because we're trying to stay positive on Brock Purdy and this team and what their chances are, and not really trying to overthink, like, maybe Brock isn't the guy. Maybe his inabilities will stop us, but we're not going to let our minds go there yet, because we haven't gotten there, and we may never get there. And it's, go ahead.
The idea that we're talking about a quarterback who is perfect in the regular season on games that he started and finished, right? And has averaged above 30 points on the offense in every game that he's in. Like, to me, the idea that we can't be high on Brock Purdy, and you listen to guys like Steve Young and qualified freaking quarterbacks speaking about Brock Purdy, saying he has the it factor, talking about the processing, talking about the ability to deliver accurate passes on time to most of those receivers in the most effective areas within Kyle Shanahan's system. Like, Kyle Shanahan's system, unless he has Julio Jones and the goal is to chuck it up to him, is based around, for the 49ers, has been based around yak yardage. So to me, the idea that enjoying what we're seeing, which is statistically backed up, that's just crazy. That's just trying to be contrarian in my mind.
Want to say what's up to David McNiner. I hope you had a great time, my man. I saw your picture with Steve Young. I'm so jealous, but at the same time, I'm so happy for you. I'm jealous in a loving friend way. I'm not jealous in a hater way, which I can be that sometimes, but I'm not choosing to be that guy.
No, that's phenomenal.
I'm choosing not to be a hater because these guys got to meet Steve Young. They were on the field at the end of the game. I think Jess from East Coast Red and Gold podcast, I saw a picture of her with Charles Haley, either a day before the game or early in the day. And I'm just like, what the hell, man?
That's awesome.
I've never met anybody. I just want to meet, and I'm not a hero worshiper as far as with fans or with players. I'm past that in my life. Like if I meet Joe Montana, I'm not going to like pee in my pajamas or say I'm not going to wash a pair of clothes or something. I mean, I might. But you might. Okay, maybe I might not wash a shirt or something, but that's nobody knows. No one's ever going to know.
Right.
But that's awesome. I just want to say I hope you had a great time, David.
Echo that.
Let's talk. We could revisit the Brock Purdy. We can go back to that.
For sure. I'm sure he'll come back up.
I want to ask you about how important Christian McCaffrey is. I want to keep it on the offense, but at the same time, how it's important that we start to integrate other players. And in saying that, man, Elijah Mitchell looked very, very non-impressive at all. I don't know if it's just because he hasn't had enough carries, but I mean, let's attack the first part of it. How important to you is Christian McCaffrey?
Incredibly important. I think that's represented. I mean, you wouldn't directly attribute this to Christian McCaffrey, but it is ancillary to the question. And that is the idea that since the first game against Kansas City at home, October of last year, where he was not familiar with the playbook, we got blown out. That was a birthday present to me last year that I didn't want. Wish I could have returned that one. We haven't lost a home game since. And I'm not, again, attributing that directly to Christian McCaffrey, saying that he is the end-all, be-all there. But let's be real about what he unlocks within Kyle Shanahan's offense. That's absolutely why Kyle Shanahan has such a hard time getting away from giving him the rock on a consistent basis, is because even when he's not picking up additional yards, and let's be clear, the dude is ridiculously elusive, has a phenomenal stiff arm, and fights through contact for a guy his size amazingly well. When I see him get hit within a yard of the line of scrimmage and push forward for 3, 4, I am blown away at how strong that little compact dude is, because his frame doesn't necessarily represent how powerful a runner he is. And so elusiveness, speed, power, he's a complete player, amazing hands. The dump off pass when there is pressure in the backfield, getting it to McCaffrey at or behind the line of scrimmage, and then getting a first down, even when it's 3rd and long, is phenomenal. But even when he's not getting the ball, even when it's not in his hand, the effect that he has on the rest of this team by opening up in space, by drawing defenders to him, or even just drawing their eyes towards him. Linebackers having to keep an eye on where McCaffrey is, frees up routes for Debo across the middle, for George Kittle on a slant. I mean, there are so many playmakers on this offense. When you look at Debo, Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey as 4 phenomenal skill position players, Christian McCaffrey being in that backfield and drawing as much attention as he does makes life that much easier for those other 3 who are stars in their own right. This is the unlock. You do need a guy that is your point guard, your John Stockton, who can distribute it to all those playmakers. And that's the beauty, again, of having Brock Purdy in there, who seems adept at doing that. But man, I do think Christian McCaffrey is a key that unlocks this. So extremely important to answer that first part of your question.
Yeah, uh, I, I had a stream Wednesday with Raj from RSF 49ers. He's like, Aaron, I still can't believe we have Christian McCaffrey on this team. He's like, when the trade happened, I was just like, he's still excited about it. And it's been over a year. And I'm like, brother, I did the same thing before the Steelers game. And I was just thinking about the game. And I'm just like, we got Christian McCaffrey. I totally forgot. Like, we're talking about Kittle. We're talking about Ayuk, Debo. We have McCaffrey. Like, he's so damn good. Like that touchdown in the first game that essentially iced the game. I'm listening to the announcers, he's talking about, this, that, and the other, and boom, up the sideline, touchdown, game's over. It was done.
Mm-hmm.
Game, set, match. And I'm just like, oh yeah, we have that guy.
Yeah.
I watched Dolphins game with my brother, right? And I'm not a Dolphins fan, but I support the Dolphins when they're not playing the Niners.
Absolutely. Mike McDaniel, baby.
I was like, you could intermix these players on each team and you wouldn't lose a step. I was like, you imagine Christian McCaffrey in the Dolphins offense?
Oh, God.
He'd be just as effective.
Yeah. And we know what Raheem Mostert can do in ours.
Yeah. And I told my brother, it's like, dude, I even said it. I said, I love Christian McCaffrey, but man, do I miss Mostert's speed.
Yeah.
Just when he's on the open field, it's like, goodbye. Goodbye.
Gone.
You're not touching him.
Cooked.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's art.
It is. It is. It really is.
And you say what you want about the Niners being a finesse team and all that and whatever, but whatever. I'll take the finesse.
I think that's bullshit, man. When you look at how we run through people, when you look at that stat last year of, teams losing the week after playing the Niners, I think we are a physically dominant team that also is a very skill oriented, right? It is that finesse. Finesse feels like the wrong word, but it's a very precision offense, right? I think that's how we get into so many penalties that are just formation penalties. It is a complicated offense. There are a lot of movements in there. You got to know your position and other players' positions. It's a complicated offense, but it's a very physical one.
Absolutely. Tommy Huxley with the $2 super. He says, "Happy Victory Friday, Peckerwoods." Thank you very much. I've never
appreciate that, Tommy.
I appreciate the sentiment. What is that? I resemble that remark or whatever that means. I don't even know what that means when somebody says I resemble that remark. It doesn't make any sense. I'll have to look it up.
It essentially means that you resemble what they are saying.
Okay, so I am a Peckerwood, I guess. Maybe not, though. Maybe not. And then let's talk about the fact we're talking about him being overused. You watched last night. And you watched Elijah Mitchell. He didn't look too impressive. He looked like, I don't know.
I wouldn't go so far as to say not impressive. He didn't look like Christian McCaffrey, but I saw a couple of good runs in there that made me think, hey, this is why I want to see more of Elijah Mitchell, because he is a capable running back within this scheme. I don't think that you're going to get the same. You are not going to get the same number of breakaway plays, impressive things done on the field. He doesn't have the same hands as Christian McCaffrey, although he did make the one catch last night. Sure. But I think it also has something to do with, some of the what the defense was doing at that time. It became far more obvious that we were going to be running because we're up. The defense is thinking, hey, we're going to stop the run because the Niners are going to try and milk the clock. So I think context does matter there. I am still optimistic that Elijah is a very capable back. I've picked him up in several fantasy leagues because I think Shanahan's going to come to his senses. This is the one area where I really do think it's fair to offer a critique. I don't think you can take that critique to the next level of fire Shanahan. That's ridiculous. But you can say, hey, wake up, man. Like, this is too early in the season to be riding your lead fucking pony that much, right? The number of touches for McCaffrey. The touches weren't crazy, but the percentage was crazy.
Yes.
The idea that it was 100% going to him. When you have the closer in Jordan Mason, you have a capable back in Elijah Mitchell, sprinkle those guys in. And so, yes, that does frustrate me, but it's not enough for me to go nuclear and erupt on Kyle Shanahan. It just is a point of contention. And I like someone who can admit when they're wrong. I thought the percentage of carries that went to Elijah Mitchell last night shows us Shanahan took a look in the mirror and he was like, you know what? I did play him too much.
He even said, if you listen to one of the interviews. He said that he doesn't pay attention to the carries. That's the position coach.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
position coach makes the determination if someone's going to go in or out.
Yeah.
And he said pretty much, I got to start taking a more of a bigger look into that. So he must have, it hurt him to have Elijah Mitchell in that game yesterday.
Oh,
As soon as you get
absolutely.
Christian McCaffrey back in that game, it was like, yes, please.
Right.
His Christian McCaffrey is he's dynamite, man. He changes everything. You're
He
right.
does. He opens up more of that playbook for him.
Yep, because the Niners are all about that over the middle, right? All of the intermediate stuff. How do you get intermediate plays open? Run the ball consistently and effectively. Guys come up, you throw over the top of them. Boom.
Yep.
Every slants, crossers, whatever. The Niners run a very simple yet effective playbook. When I play Madden with the Niners, I run the exact same plays: crossers, slants, comebacks.
They are wildly effective.
And Christian McCaffrey in Madden is really, 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 and I hate Madden, but I bought it this year. He's really good. So I had
it turns out in real life, he's pretty good too.
It's crazy. Frank Tom Ocean, thank you, my friend. One of the biggest and best supporters of my channel with the $5 super. He says, any let's rewind that. Any mid-season trade predictions? Rumor is Falcons are going to use Pitts much in the passing game. Oh, sorry. What happened? Would it be cool to trade for him if he's available? I'll let Rob take that one first. Kyle Pitts, the 49ers.
I would love that trade. I don't think it's the best way to move the needle, but I think it is a way to move the needle. The 49ers have been looking for a second tight end for a long time, and they've tried it with, Jordan Reed, who couldn't stay healthy and was past his prime. They took a couple of shots at other free agents that were available that ended up elsewhere as starters. And so they were looking for high caliber second tight ends. They took 2 swings at the Pinata during the draft. And so far that hasn't turned out to be fruitful. But I'll tell you what, I still see why Charlie Warner makes this squad when I watch him blocking on those run plays. To bring in a second pass catcher opposite of Kittle would be yet another layer on this offense. I would challenge that in saying, again, not going to move the needle as much as a move at, let's say, right tackle might. Now, I'm still patient right now at that position because let's be very clear. The offensive line is a unit, and it's very frequent that a unit at the beginning of the season, when they're new or have a new player within the unit, are not quite as cohesive as a unit the year prior, like our unit was last year. The offensive line, very dominant. And give them a couple of games to get into, cohesion with one another. At that point, closer to the trade deadline, if you still are struggling on the right side of the line, certainly bringing in someone at right tackle would improve Burford, right? Because he would have someone stronger on his right-hand side. That, to me, might be the more prudent move because it would shore up something that protects an important asset on any NFL team, the quarterback. But Kyle Pitts would absolutely add to this offense. He's still on the rookie deal. I made that, weird argument in a funny Sports Illustrated article about drafting Kyle Pitts that year instead of Trey Lance at that number 3 spot. Just the idea of the unlock that would have been. And I kind of stand by that. Like, had you added a value player at 3 instead of someone who rode the bench, and no criticism of Trey in that, just facts of what happened, we probably would have won it all. Like, I mean, at some point. So, I go back and forth with it.
It's weird because I like it, and it would be an interesting, as the Emperor or Vader say, it would be a great asset. But I wonder if offense is where we need more assets. I look at edge rusher. That's kind of my bone to pick.
Edge is a big one.
As much as the defensive line looked really good last night in week 1, I still would love to have an accomplished veteran edge opposite Nick Bosa. I love Drake Jackson. I love Clelin Ferrell. But when you talk about moving the needle, neither of those guys really move the needle for me. I'm talking about personal. I'm not, and a lot of people, what that's going to do, and they can't pay everybody. I get it. I'm totally aware of all that. Like, everybody's so quick to just like, no, you can't do that. I'm just saying, like, it would be an interesting move because then you could see, man, this because I mean Hargrave looks great so far.
Yes.
Javon Kinlaw, who I'm not a fan of, he's looking pretty good this year. Like the defensive line, they went with that 5D line formation that they're gonna, I guess, start running, and they
Yeah.
were almost unblockable. They only got
That was
one
phenomenal.
sack, but it was quite impressive. But I think offensive tackle, as much as it's not sexy, I would have to agree with you. If there's somebody out there that really can move the needle, and people keep using the move the needle word. It's just it's something that would affect the Niners, and you would be able to see it. Instead of adding a pass catcher that may not get the ball, and they'll be like, "Oh, what a waste of a move. We already have enough. He's going to be like sixth in the progression or whatever." So I
Yeah.
don't know.
If I were stack ranking them, I would go tackle first, edge. I certainly like the case that you're making there. And I think you could make the move for someone who would be expensive with draft capital, like a Brian Burns, and bring him in just on the 1-year rental, right? You would give up a lot to get him, but you wouldn't have to necessarily give the next contract. So it wouldn't necessarily be a cap casualty type of thing. It would be a draft capital casualty. And you see if that brings you over the top. So to me, it would be tackle, then edge, then something like adding a peripheral player like a Pitts. But if you get a shot at a young, up-and-coming, potential elite star and can get that individual at a reasonable cost, I think you have to explore that.
Brian Burns, that would be not fair, but I wouldn't care. And I'm not trying to rhyme.
No,
that
you do it.
If that doesn't put you over the top, I don't know what does. Burns, Hargrave, Bosa, all on the same defensive line. Yeah, check please. Like I'll take it. Like it probably won't happen, but it would be awesome.
It would be phenomenal because even though the one sack we got off the edge last night was not a spectacular play by Bosa. It was a sprint to the quarterback. They failed to fricking block him. How do you not block Bosa, right?
Bosa? Like
that's unbelievable.
You had one job.
If Bosa were a half step slower, Daniel Jones probably would have been in the end zone by the time he got to him. So his speed actually worked against him on that sack.
Yeah, that was a beautiful sack, though. I'm not gonna lie.
It was glorious. It was like beautiful perfect. Textbook tackle.
A lot of us were going like, who's going to get 4 sacks in the game? Sorry, guys, it didn't happen. But we got one. We'll start with one. Everybody, is like, oh, well, J.J. Watt's got this many, and I like how people are already jumping off the Bosa train and saying that you don't pay deep. He's paid too much, and that's what he gets. He's selfish, and
that's absurd. Absurd.
See, I'm not a type of person who likes to block people, because I think it's kind of weak sauce, but there is times where I'm just like, yeah, you're dumb. I have to block you. Really? Bosa's overpaid? Okay. What do you suggest? Like, nah, I'm good. You have to, that's the cost of doing business when you have elite athletes and you're trying to win championships. You
absolutely,
you have to pay them. You have to pay them. Let's see here. And we touched a little bit on, man, we kind of almost touched on everything, but
hey, bring them back in if you want to hit them deeper.
Pause. What is okay? We could talk about this. Ronnie Bell, he got his first touchdown last night, and I think he got his first reception, his first catch, and his first touchdown all in the same play, and then he got the tip or whatever. But what's ahead for him? What do you see in his future? Could you see I'm just putting this out there, 49er fans, do not get stressed out. Could you see a situation that if he develops into something special, where if the Niners have to make a move in the future to move off said player, say like a Debo or an Ayuk or even a Kittle, where he could be a guy that eventually takes one of those guys' spots and becomes what we've got with these other guys already? I don't see it yet. I still think he's extremely raw. I'd like to see more out of him. But what is your overall feeling on him just from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm incredibly impressed with what I see so far. I see exactly the kind of wide receiver that Kyle Shanahan covets. A dog, a football player, a tough guy through and through. And that came shining through the screen in that initial hit on special teams that, again, I thought woke up the 49ers squad. You saw players reacting to it. I mean, it was just a phenomenal tackle, phenomenal hit, and he bounced right back up. And the work ethic, the way in which people describe him in practices, always bringing it, to me, those types of players are important to have within the locker room. And I thought this showed up on Hard Knocks with the Jets. Those two undrafted wide receivers that ended up making the team. The one who's a much smaller dude, who's the return guy, who ended up winning the game in overtime against Buffalo. That, to me, like, Robert Saleh learned from Kyle Shanahan. He's clearly of Shanahan's tree, attributes, a lot of what he learned about being a head coach from Shanahan. Now, I would argue that Robert Saleh, as a pure leader of men, is a better leader than Kyle Shanahan. Like, if you want to get me to run into a 250-pound guy and sacrifice my body, Robert Saleh is going to get me to do that more than Kyle Shanahan. If you want to scheme up a way to get a wide receiver open, I'm turning to Shanahan. But just to fire me up, to get my blood boiling, Robert Saleh is that guy. So I think he understands the importance of tone setters, of players that come in and work their ass off. Nothing was given to them. They earned everything. They're not divas. Their noses in the playbook all of the time. They do all the right things, all the little things. And my impression of that is those guys level up everyone around them. And I think the Niners are very fortunate in having a lot of savvy veterans who are doing that for the team right now. Stars and veterans that are doing that. Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, the guys that show up and practice the right way, take things seriously, and set the tone for those guys beneath them. But you can have that from the fringe players too. And that's a different mentality, because it's easy if you're a guy who's getting paid less to say, well, yeah, if I got paid as much as Christian McCaffrey, I'd take it that seriously as well too. When you look at a dude who was a 7th round selection and he takes it as seriously as he does, he shows up every day, then there's no excuse for you. You better hold yourself to that same standard that Ronnie Bell holds himself to. So I love guys like that. I don't know how far he goes in replacing some of the stars that we have on this team. I'm not going to start comparing him to Debo, Brandon Ayuk, or even Juwan Jennings at this point.
No, he hasn't reached that place. He had a really impressive preseason. But that's the preseason. He was going against a lot of, guys that, and no offense, are probably going to be working at UPS. They actually make pretty good money, UPS drivers. So it's not a shot. But there's still way more that you got to see. But I like, you're right, 7th round pick. Like, these people, like the Niners they just find a lot of these guys that just love football and somehow through hell or high water make the team. And they're actually good, productive football players that give something. They're not just a feel-good story. So yeah, I'm a big Ronnie Bell fan, but yeah, we're way early in the process with him. Steve-O, again, thank you for the $2 super. He says, welcome to the Brock and Sean Connery voice. Is that from the movie The Rock?
It is indeed.
Okay, I was just making sure. I've never watched the movie The Rock. Probably should, right?
Oh man, Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage, that is a good flick. Yeah, you got to check that out.
My friend used to love that. One of my best friends growing up, he was a big Buffalo Bills fan, big into like super huge movies like that. Watch him over and over. We used to watch old football highlights. They were like the 100 greatest touchdowns. We would watch stuff about we had the 49ers. I think it was the 1989 yearbook where we beat the Broncos, and we would just watch that whole video over and over again.
That's awesome.
He was a Bills fan, but he loved Joe Montana. Go ahead.
Who doesn't? Anyone in their right mind loves Joe Montana. And you've got me with any of the NFL film stuff with that great scored music that they put to it. The Autumn Wind is a Raider, like all of those songs that they use.
Yeah, dude.
When I hear that, my soul lights up.
We used to throw the ball around outside, and he would bring out like his radio, and we would listen to that, and we would just like be throwing the ball around with the music playing. Dude, I was a nerd for that stuff. Oh, absolutely. I thought I was phenomenal. The only one. That's sweet. Steve-O says, I tried to trade the whole team. I'm a front runner. No, I'm not trying to trade the whole team. This is all hypotheticals. I'm just thinking Brian Burns if you're gonna go, the thing is, you better win it. That's the whole thing. If you make that move and you don't win, then heads should roll. But that's a pipe dream. You know, it's never pie in the sky. It's not going to happen. But
Right.
if you're asking me, gun to my face, who would you really want? Who would make the team that much better and possibly win a championship? That's the kind of guy. Like Trent Williams. When they're the Niners, did they make a trade for Trent Williams? Was it in the
They did.
offseason?
Yep.
Okay. That's you give up assets for that, but that's a cornerstone piece to help you win a championship. He's one of the greatest of all time at his position.
Yep.
How do you have to make that move, even if it doesn't work out, it's still like he's one of the greatest of all time. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, the Brian Burns thing is just me talking out my rear end, but it would be cool. Not gonna lie. I'm not gonna
absolutely. And hey, this team has set themselves up to make a move. I don't think there's any guarantee that they do. We are over the projected cap with the players we have signed for next year. So that 42 million or whatever we're at right now in surplus for this year could just be rolled forward and used next year to sign more of our players.
Yeah, Lynch said that it would be to re-rolled over, but he said that they wouldn't be against making a move.
Exactly. There's the option of doing it this season because they could have waited and done that later if it were purely for next year. They didn't. They did it ahead of the season. That to me speaks to, hey, we want the flexibility just in case. And that makes sense to me because this roster, I have no problem saying it, is set up to compete for a Super Bowl. I've predicted, I think this is our year. The only thing that gets in the way of that is when you have an accruement of injuries, particularly if it happens at one position. To free up that kind of money now allows the Niners to be shoppers if that happens.
Yeah, it's to me the biggest deterrent if the Niners don't win a Super Bowl this year would be injuries.
Right.
I think that's their biggest opponent.
I mean,
it's not.
Yeah, look at the Jets, right? The Jets had high hopes for this year, and rightfully so. 4 plays into the game,
yeah,
Aaron Rodgers is down.
Their season's over.
Yep.
I don't care what you say. Well, okay, go ahead. I know you're going to be more positive.
I mean, it's a miracle throw, right? If you somehow get Zach Wilson, and that defense could keep you in every game. So if you get into the playoffs by an elite defense that keeps you in that 10-7 range, which is feasible, and then Zach Wilson has a couple of hot games, and then the miracle recovery for Aaron Rodgers allows him to step back on the field earlier than expected because he's a quarterback and he doesn't really have to run around quite as much as a skill position player. If all of those things aligned, maybe there's a chance. The odds of all those things aligning are slim and none.
Every time somebody says there's a chance, I think of automatically Jim Carrey.
Yeah. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah. I didn't realize that we didn't touch this this topic. But old Deebo looked like he was back last night.
Yes.
I thought Deebo Samuel looked like his old self last night, plowing through people. He hurt himself a little bit. I don't know if he hurt his ribs, if he fell on the ball. That's the price you pay, though. As much as I love it, it's like that's what comes with the territory with these guys who love to steamroll NFL players with their bodies is they might not get up from it, and we're going to have to pay the penance for it. But I thought he looked great last night. I thought the old Deebo was back. I think he got over 100 yards receiving last night, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he did. Deebo Samuel had 129 on 6 receptions.
Yeah, he looked really good.
He looked phenomenal. I think he still is proving that when in the shape that he wants to be in, he is the yak king on this team, that he runs through people. There was a couple of instances, but one in particular, I can't recall which play it was, but the tackles that he was running through, it was comical, right? It really did look like varsity playing against JV, and it was later in the game, so maybe there was a question of effort coming in, but that's the point, is like, hey, you're down a little bit, and you start to make business decisions. Deebo, with his thick thighs, is running right at you, and you've got a question. Do I want to absorb that mass when it comes at me, or am I just going to kind of shirk my responsibilities and try and make an arm tackle, and then, oh, look at that, I didn't get to bring him down? That's the type of thing that grows in intensity as the season progresses as well. You get into January where guys' bodies are all beat up. If Debo is staying healthy and is trucking people like that, it's a huge advantage to me in the cold weather, in the playoffs, on the road. It's just a momentum builder when he sets the tone like that. It calls out everyone else on the offense. It clearly fires up guys like George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, who also pride themselves on their ability to block and to run through people. And Christian McCaffrey, like I said, he may not look the part in my mind of a bruiser, but he really is.
Yeah, I'm a big Debo guy. My brother said that he thought he's on the downside. And I told him, I said he was out of shape last year. He really couldn't work out because of the contract situation. So he kind of had to, if he works out and gets hurt, that goes against him. All of a sudden, he doesn't get his money.
Yeah.
He's a lot smaller this year, which is interesting.
Yeah, leaner. I don't know how
quicker.
much less he weighs, though.
He might just be more cut up. I mean, his legs are still massive. They're like tree trunks.
Yeah, muscle weighs more than fat, right? So if you lose some of that fat but gain muscle, you may still retain the same weight, the same mass. You're just leaner, quicker, more able to inflict that damage. Whatever the case may be, the difference between the shape he was in last year and the shape he is back in this year feels like night and day. It was one of those moments of like, oh shit, when he went down and got the wind knocked out of him. But again, it fires up the crowd when he pops back up after they're chanting, Debo, Debo.
They did it that year when Bosa fell down during that one game, remember?
Yeah, same thing. Wind knocked out of him.
Yeah. Who knew, right? These guys play at breakneck pace. They might get the wind knocked out of them.
Occasionally, where you can't breathe.
Jess from East Coast Running Goal podcast. You were there last night. I saw it. I saw your picture with Charles Haley. I'm trying to remember if that was before. I'm sorry. Why does that keep happening? I hate my computer. She meets everybody. Anytime
That's
Jess
awesome.
goes somewhere, be ready to have pictures with multiple famous 49ers. I don't know how she does it. I told her, it was like, drop hey, there's this guy, Aaron, that I know, just in case, come on my YouTube channel. But I'm playing. I told her that the one time, but I said, just keep it in mind. I want to meet these guys one of these days. I'm an East Coaster, man. Like I have to take the trip. I talked to Raj from RSF 49ers, and he was talking about, I told him, I said, I might have to come out during training camp next year and hang out.
That would be cool.
On my channel is nowhere near any of those real top guys, but the fact that we all share one thing in common, and that's our love for the Niners. I really don't care. I won't go there and take notes. I'll just sit there and watch camp.
That's just it. Like getting notoriety as a YouTube channel, all of that is fantastic. To me, it's the life experience of this thing, right? It's the idea of bullshitting about the Niners with another fan. Like that, to me, I do that whether I'm on TV or not. It just is more entertaining when other people see it and interact, because now we've got other Niner fans right next to us in this live feed adding, flavor to it, adding comments, adding jokes, giving us shit to react to. Like, it just makes this interaction between you and I that much better. But you and I have been on a phone call where we do the same thing when no one's watching. We're still talking Niners.
Yeah, it's not just some people, this isn't even a knock. Some people do it to get paid. That's their job, to talk about the team. They might not even love the team. They just, that's what they do. That's their 9 to 5. See, I don't get paid for this. So It's real. And I've been talking about the 49ers since I was 10 years old, and I'm going to be 44 in a couple months. It's just real. You could ask all my friends. I went into work today. 2 of my coworkers were like, oh, there's Mr. Lab again. Look at him walking around with that 3-0 team. And one of them's a Cowboys fan. And I'm like, I'm enjoying it for now. All right. I was like, your team's really good. I can't wait to play the Cowboys. It might be a tough game for us.
It's going to be a great one.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. They're really talented. It sucks that they lost Diggs, though. That might come back to hurt them against us because of the talent that we have. But they got that defensive line. Ooh.
I would suspect Brandon Ayuk is back next week, and so long as there's no aggravation of that injury, having him back with Debo, Kittle against that secondary, it's a huge loss. But I'm never going to feel sorry for Dallas.
No, you're right there with
I
me.
feel badly
really
for
don't care.
Diggs. I do not feel badly for Dallas.
Yes, I always feel bad for the individual player
No doubt.
unless he's like a toolbox or something, and then it's like whatever. But still, I don't wish
Sure, if you've
injury
got
or
karma coming your way, it's easier for me to write that off.
Jess says it's sure a lot of life experience yesterday. It was awesome. That's great. You deserve
That's
it. You're
cool.
one of the best people on YouTube. You, Ty Alston, and the rest of the East Coast Red and Gold podcast crew. You guys are awesome. So listen, man, the new Aaron is not about hate and drama. He's trying to be more positive. It's tough because
I like it.
I'm going against my my nature to be moody, but what the hell? I mean, we're talking something that we're all happy and passionate about, so might as well be happy.
Might as well.
You can't let it stress you out, dude. There's enough in life to stress you out.
Yeah, life's fucking hard enough as it is, right? Enjoy the little things.
Yes. The fact that the Niners are winning this year makes me pretty happy.
Amen to that.
What we touched on this, and then I'll revisit it. The 49ers defense, they were running that 5-men front last night. First of all, what do you think of the Niners defense? Are they as good as last year? Are they better? Is it a wash? Right. I was a little bit. I've said that they're not as good as last year so far, even though they've played really well in 2 out of the 3 games. But the Giants don't really have a lot of weapons, so it's kind of a hard thing to judge. I still think like the game against the Rams with Puka Nacua getting like 7,000 catches really pissed me off. I know that they were playing a lot of underneath stuff, but it was still bothering me.
Yeah.
What's your take on the defense? Your opinion of them? Better, same, worse, or too early to judge?
I think it's fair to say that to this point, they are not as elite as they showed themselves to be early on last season. And I would still give them a TBD because I think you have to take into account that, yes, the vast majority of the defense has stayed in place, right? Same defensive players, but you brought in a new defensive coordinator. And while he has said, hey, I inherited the number 1 defense, and so therefore I need to come in with humility and I need to not change a bunch of things, it is still tweaks, new scheme, a bit of a different way that they're playing in the secondary, right? And so it takes a while for those changes to set in with the players and for them to get as comfortable and play at the same speed that they were playing at within DeMeco Ryans' system. So, I mean, I recall when DeMeco Ryans first took over, there were a few games where fans started saying, man, we miss Robert Saleh. This was a mistake. DeMeco Ryans isn't the guy. Well, it turned out DeMeco Ryans was absolutely that dude. He has everything I would want in a defensive coordinator, and I would absolutely have him as the head coach of my team. So to me, it's too early to be definitive about it. There are areas of concern. I think edge production is one of them. Were those 3 sacks by Drake Jackson, skill related or more of coverage sacks and just effort, right? The fact that he continued, his motor was still going and eventually got to the quarterback. That's not always going to happen if a quarterback has a fast release or if the team is playing that short game. We have to be able to get home. The 1 sack that we got off the edge last night was a blown coverage. It was, not putting a blocker on Nick Bosa. Who the hell does that? So I am still monitoring the situation. The talent is there. And I think once the scheme matches up with that talent, the sky's the limit. I'm pleased to see that while it took us longer to make our adjustments against the Rams, I felt like the adjustments we made last night against the Giants came much quicker. We had that first drive where it felt like a hot knife through butter, and they were just moving until we stalled them in the red zone. And even when they stalled out on the first drive, felt more like the Giants made a couple of mistakes, right? The first catch on that series, first down, it hit the running back right in the chest. Now, he may have only gotten 4 yards in that, but 2nd and 6 is a lot different than 2nd and 10, especially against a defense that gets after you. So it is, again, too early, but I can get on board with people who say to this point, the defense isn't as dominant as it was last year.
Yeah, I don't get the same feeling, at least right now, with them. I feel like they're just a step slower. Maybe not in the tackling aspect. I still think that they're great tacklers, especially the linebackers. The coverage is a wash. It's been good, and then it's also been real bad against the Rams. It was
The
pretty
soft coverage against the Rams drove me fucking crazy.
Yeah, I that was the first game in probably a couple of years where I was using some words like "can cover." What the
Yeah.
like? I was like, dude, like, and I've been trying to stay positive, but I wasn't real positive watching that Rams game. I was getting hot.
It was hard not to. I was saying this on Between Two Beards with Randon, and he was like, I'm not as caught up in it. But it was an ex-49er that held the record of most catches through 2 games as a rookie. And here we are trying to defend that record, and we allow this rookie to run roughshod all over us in that game and set a new record as far as number of receptions. That bugged me to no end because it just felt like we didn't have an answer there. And it took us a long time to adjust against a better team. That would have cost us. So the criticisms are fair, and yet we're 3-0.
Exactly. If this is the worst of it, or some of the worst of it, and we haven't quite hit our stride yet, that's a pretty good thing. That's why it's good to win early games in the season, even if you're not at your best, because then when you actually become at your best, now you're now you're hard to beat. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
The NFL season is an ebb and flow of ups and downs. We've played not the greatest in some aspects, but I think for the most part, you can take the 3 wins and be okay with them, even if they're not sexy or, look good from the optic point of view. It's still, to me, I'll take the 3 wins.
To me, it speaks to the dominance of the team. If you are able to make mistakes and win games, then what about when you clean up the mistakes? Now you are a freaking dominant team. Whereas last year, dropping games to Atlanta, to Chicago, to Denver, where we had painful high penalty count games and it cost us the win, that's more of a detriment. That's something to get upset about. When you're able to pull it off despite those errors, now I can start to picture, okay, we get this thing rolling. We clean up some of those penalties. We go from good to phenomenal.
I don't know how much longer you got. I'm just gonna put it out there. I wanted to ask you about Purdy again.
Ask me.
What do you say to people who like to throw around that Purdy's essentially just Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0? I see vast differences in the way that they play the game, mindset, just character-wise. The way Brock leads his team, the way he has command of the huddle, the way guys look at him, the way he talks to guys if they're not playing well or not in the right position. I don't see the dink and dunk part. Yeah, whatever, throwing short passes, but he's more. I think he's more accurate, to be honest with you, than Garoppolo was. I think Garoppolo could get a little bit, trying to put guys in the hospital with some of the stuff. What's your take
on the difference between Purdy and Garoppolo there and the accuracy? I would say a couple of key differences in between those characters. For me, the biggest one is definitely got to be pocket presence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this for Jimmy Garoppolo changed with the blown knee. And if it did, I can't say I fault him. Like, you blow out my knee and I'm going to be a different guy too. I'm going to be a little more protective over it when I've felt it go completely sideways once. And, I get it that as a professional athlete, you've got to be able to shake that off. But I always felt uneasy once you saw the happy feet for Jimmy Garoppolo, right? When he started doing the choppy steps as bodies around him in the pocket began to collapse, it just felt like he wasn't locked in downfield. Now, Brock, you could almost go the opposite route, that there are times where he's held onto the ball too long and he's still looking downfield. He's still looking to make a play and he's taking a shot as a result of it. But I would rather have that where you can correct that behavior for Brock and have the willingness to hang in the pocket, the willingness to take the shot if need be, and continuing to keep the eyes downfield. And then to touch on the accuracy, when I look at Jimmy Garoppolo when he is healthy, and you've heard a lot of people say this, and Niner fans will scoff at it, but some people will say, hey, he's one of the better spinners of the ball out there, right? Just his pure throwing ability. And I was watching the Raiders the other day, and there was a an outside throw to Davante Adams that was just on the money. Now, there were other head scratchers that he would make. And that's where I see the bigger difference to this point is much calmer within the pocket for Brock Purdy, less of the happy feet, no happy feet that I see. And the accuracy is still there on some of those throws, but better decision making.
Fired up 49ers is just going to give it to you like it's plain as day. Purdy reads the field. He's a leader. He knows how to get rid of the ball. Garoppolo sucked at all of those. You sound like me when I'm in one of my moods.
I got to call a little bit of BS on the not a leader for Garoppolo. Like, you look at all of his teammates and the way they continued to stick up for him. That dude was well liked in the locker room. And that is the epitome of a leader, right? If they're willing to get behind you and support you regardless. So I beg to differ on that one. The other criticisms, I think, are more fair.
Yeah, they liked him. The roster liked him. I think I think me and you had a difference in agreement is when just how 49er fans when Garoppolo made his way back when Trey Lance got hurt last year. I was upset because I felt like everyone was like, "Oh, Jimmy's back. At least we got Jimmy." And I was just like, "Screw that." You know what? Like, I was just so upset that everybody was just so dismissive of Trey Lance. Yeah, that's where I get a little bit fired up. But I'll be honest, like was definitely a leader, and they definitely fell in line behind him. The Kittle, there was that meeting that Kyle Shanahan talked about of certain players on the team. They're all Garoppolo guys. McGlinchey, Kyle Juszczyk, whoever else, Kittle, and that those guys would much rather put their futures in the hands of somebody who's done it before than a rookie who doesn't have the experience. I remember talking to Raj, and he was saying, like, to a man, when he people talked to guys at the Pro Bowl, they were asked legitimately what they felt about Trey Lance and who they rather have at quarterback, and a lot of them were like, "Hey, if I got to win a game right now, I'd rather go with Jimmy than I would go with Trey, just because Trey's great and he puts all the work in. But when you're trying to win right now, you got to put the ball in the hands of a guy that you trust more than a guy of the unknown type." So
yeah,
as much as I hate to admit it, he had the respect of the locker room.
He most definitely did. And for me, there had to be two things that I held true in that moment. I felt awful for Trey Lance when that happened. The circumstances that unfolded for Trey Lance in San Francisco were horrible. And I don't blame anyone. I see it as, quite honestly, mostly bad luck. I think you can criticize decisions. Kyle Shanahan admitted fault in saying, listen, this was a kid that I thought needed reps. And because of that logic, I left him in longer in the Raiders game. And because I left him in longer, he broke his pinky on that helmet. And that decision had a ripple effect going forward. I really appreciated that from Kyle Shanahan because I thought that was a true admission of like, hey, this is the logic I used to make that decision. I don't think I was wrong in that logic, and yet the outcome proved that I was wrong in my choice. And to me, that's owning up to like, hey, it falls on me, even though I thought I was doing the right thing at the time for the young gentleman. And when you look at the other circumstances that continued to unfold, again, you can critique, hey, Trey wasn't a big enough guy to be running into the teeth of the defense. Again, I think those are more minor criticisms, and the end result of the injury that came out of it is disproportionate to the quality of the decision that was made there, right? The part that you can actually critique. So I just think it was, honestly, what happens to a lot of players within the NFL. It's a small sample size. You only get a handful of snaps until, coaches start to make decisions, and it just didn't unfold in the right way. And people said, hey, Trey Lance fell into the best situation for a young quarterback, but for a young quarterback that needed reps, he fell into the worst situation because the expectations were up here for the 49ers, and they didn't have time to wait until a quarterback gained the experience that Trey needed coming out with so few reps.
That was the thing that I always, after I got off my feelings when Trey first got drafted, because I was happy just like everybody else. I'm like, finally, we got the new age quarterback, the big, strong armed, mobile, all those things that we see in Mahomes and Allen and maybe in Burrow to some extent. And we got we got our own. And then I
Yeah.
started to think about it. I'm like, he's actually in the worst situation possible because we have a win now roster. And the any player who's on a win now roster who knows that the time in the NFL is finite and it could end at any time,
Yep.
they don't want to waste a year with an inexperienced quarterback, wasting games, wasting a season when they have a guy on the roster, whether you like him or not, has a better shot at winning it, even in his limited capacity as a thrower. And Jimmy's, in his the way he plays, like it sucks. I didn't want to admit it. I was upset about it, but the more I look at it now, and I think that's what allowed me to move past Trey Lance. Did I think he got a raw deal? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did I think he got screwed over and that the Niners mishandled him? Yes. In a way, though, like Larry Krueger always says, football's a meritocracy, man.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter where you're drafted. If you produce and you help a team win and you're a 7th round last pick in the draft quarterback, you're going to get the chance to be the starter. If you're the 3rd pick in the draft and you're still learning and you can't read the field and you make poor decisions, you cost the team a game, you can't keep yourself healthy, a number of things. Shit happens.
It does.
That's life. It's part of life. And people who are just so dead set on hating on Brock Purdy because Trey Lance didn't get the job and get it done and become the guy, you're wasting your energy. You're living angry. I think it's a waste of time. If you want to say until we win a Super Bowl, if Brock doesn't win a Super Bowl, then it was a failure this year. Yeah. I'm not living in that world anymore. I'm choosing to be positive because I think, one, Brock opens this window to keep winning because he's making no money, which means you can spend money in other areas. Yeah. And if the goal is to win the Super Bowl and you don't get it done, and one of the reasons you don't get it done is maybe you don't have the right tackle or an edge rusher, and you go into next year, I mean, you might not be able to afford it, but I'm saying, like, you're going to be able to build a good team around him for the next 2 years at least.
Absolutely.
Would you rather, I got to take, I'm good with it. Like, I'm okay with it. So a lot of 49ers are like, nah, Trey Lance was the man, and they just refuse to move off of that. And they want to be negative and they don't want to enjoy the season. And you could be 10-0 in the season and you're going to be still talking about Trey Lance got screwed over. And it's like, dude, he's the 3rd stringer on the Dallas Cowboys. He's not even going to touch the field this year. Let it go. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. That's just me. And I was just as mad as everybody else when they decided to essentially make him the 3rd stringer. I was like, man, really? But life.
It is. Things don't always work out the way that you want them to, and you've got to make the best of the situation once the cards are laid out on the table. And I thought the Niners did a good job of acknowledging the true place they were at, and let's be honest, like they in trading him away for very little in return. They acknowledged that the drama that it brought in to the fan base, to the media who continued because of the interest of us, the fans, and I don't put myself in that category because I towards the end tried to even avoid talking about it because it felt so toxic, but it just kept coming up. And for a team that's trying to go the distance, small distractions like that can add up because Brock will have some rough games this season, like every quarterback does. And you don't need that echo chamber of fans that then produce through the media these constant questions of, hey, well, what about this? Well, shouldn't we be looking at that? That kind of drama detracts from the focus of the locker room. So I get the move. And I also think it's the most fair move for Trey as well. I saw the comment in the chat from Fired Up 49ers a couple minutes ago about getting traded from a win now team to a win now team. That's true, but all of the pressure is gone from Trey Lance. He is in a far better scenario now because there is zero expectations of him. And if he gets a shot, he just has another opportunity to prove what he has. It's not the same drama. It's not the same pressure. It's not the same process of having to answer all those goddamn questions all the time about, whether he deserves to have that shot. To your point, if he ever gets the opportunity again, it is a meritocracy. If he shows that he has that value, he will earn himself a starting role somewhere. And I said it before, and I mean it. I'm rooting for that man. I hope he has the most success when he's not with the Cowboys, but I hope he has success.
I would love to see him get traded to another team who has where their quarterback situation is less concrete, and maybe he's in an offense that actually suits his play style.
Maybe
instead of the old square, what are the square peg and a round hole, or round hole and
right.
square, whatever the saying.
Yep.
That's essentially what Trey Lance was with this offense.
I think that's a fair statement.
He didn't fit. Brock Purdy is essentially an extension of Kyle Shanahan on the field. He does what Kyle wants. And people will say, well, he's limited, but that's what Kyle wants.
Yeah, he's almost what Kyle would draw up in a quarterback.
And you know what's funny? I'll give you an example, and I know you're gonna stop me before I finish it. The end of the half against the Rams, driving down the field, he would have never given that opportunity to Jimmy Garoppolo. As far as being aggressive, letting him, he ran that offense and he snuck thing in, and he had some big stones in that friggin' and it changed the trajectory of the game essentially. And the Niners in the second half, they adjusted the defense, yada yada yada. They won the game, right? That's all you need to know about how Kyle feels about Brock Purdy.
100%. The relationship between Kyle and Jimmy got toxic at the end. I think it's evidenced certainly in the way Shanahan has spoken about Jimmy since he left. And now with Jimmy making the comments he has, I think it's clear to see that both of them had reached that point where you just couldn't work together, and you can't have that as your starting quarterback and your offensive play caller. Whereas now you watch the interactions between Brock and Shanahan on the sideline, it's very clear that Shanahan holds Brock in high regard. And I think that matters because you've got to have faith in your quarterback if you are the play caller. I think you're absolutely spot on that there would have been a conservative, let's run out the half and come back out in the second, were it Jimmy behind center.
It's weird too, because you look at Brock physically and he doesn't, you're just like, he's a small guy. His arm is below average, but I don't know, man. It's like, I can't say it's smoke and mirrors, but sometimes you watch Brock and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop with this kid, and it just doesn't.
And it's still early, right? I think it is. It's too early to anoint him as, the next coming of something, but it's at the appropriate point to be very excited about what you have in a quarterback who is costing you a fraction of what he should.
Yeah, I'm really positive about this 49ers team. I am a little worried in some aspects in some parts of the team, but overall, I think this has the makings to possibly be the year we finally cash that check, man. Yeah, I'm really
banking on it, man. I said it before the season started, and I'm not backing away from that statement now.
Definitely. Everybody, thank you so much for coming through. I'm gonna let Rob get out of here. It's been a long time. I enjoyed this immensely, more than I thought I would, and I want to do this again. I know, we both have our stuff going outside of YouTube. So, nothing is a sure thing as far as, linking back up, but I definitely want to do this again for sure.
Absolutely, man. I had a blast doing it. I would love to make it happen again. I hope that anybody watching does the good deed of smashing the like button, subscribing to the channel. It's just fun to talk football with a fellow 49er fan. It is a hell of a season to be breaking down the Niners. This is a fun team to watch, and I just dig it, having the rational conversations where it doesn't have to be about picking sides on quarterbacks, right? We've moved past some of that drama, even though there's still a contingent on Twitter that want to drag it back up and beat that dead horse yet again. Thankfully, we're moving beyond it. The conversations are becoming more rational and more optimistic that the better the Niners play.
I feel like the better the Niners play, the more of those conversations will get quieter, especially if they win a ring. And then all those people will turn into Brock Purdy fans.
Yeah.
Feel like, I knew he could do it. I was just, I wasn't sure. And okay. Yeah, whatever.
Hey, there's room on the bandwagon, baby. Get on.
Come on. If you want to join the bandwagon after the fact, I'm okay with it.
That's right. Hey, if we're winning, I'm not going to criticize it.
Nope. But if we're losing, you stay away from me. No, I'm just kidding. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great rest of your night, and hopefully we'll see you guys again together.
Most
Take care.
definitely.
See ya.